Welcome to episode number 6 of the Castbar. The future is upon us. Blizzard releases a sneak peek at their plans for 2015 with some features that just might surprise you. Heads up, you might want to grab some popcorn. We try to break out the polish and examine the new gearing system for Warlords. To wrap it up, we give you our opinion of stepping into the cold eyes of one of WoW's signature classes. Thank you and enjoy. Welcome everyone, thank you for tuning into the Castbar, the World of Warcraft podcast channeling your content with no interrupts. Today is Sunday, December 21st, coming up on Christmas. As always with me I have Evan.
How you doing, Michael?
Doing great. And Florian.
Hey there.
Hello. And how have your guys' holiday seasons been?
Well, you know me, just, I guess you don't necessarily know me during the holiday season because the podcast is relatively new, but just working, the weather's getting a little bit colder. I'm alright with that, and getting ready for doing some serious traveling this weekend.
Serious traveling, like you got a long way to go?
Yeah, we're visiting the significant other's parents up in Baltimore, and then going down to Southern Virginia to visit my parents, and every night's going to be at a different relative's house. A lot of skipping around. Not a lot of distance covered, just a lot of appointments to make.
Fair. We are going nowhere because my relatives are less than an hour away, and my significant other's relatives are 4,000 miles away. And being in Alaska, anything in the lower 48 might as well be another freaking country. So we are going to a whole bunch of nowhere this year. It also because, like, tickets anywhere out of Alaska are obnoxiously expensive. Like, if we lived in Washington, like Seattle, instead, it would cost, like, $200 to fly somewhere. But flying that same place from Alaska makes it, like, $700. Is
there a train transportation or bus through Canada?
No.
What about boat to Seattle?
You can take a ferry from Anchorage to Seattle, but it's like $1,000. It's super expensive.
Ooh, I see.
And I might be exaggerating a little bit, but it definitely doesn't save you money by any means. They make it more expensive because a lot of people use it to, like, bring their car from Seattle to Anchorage or whatever, or they're moving like a U-Haul, so, you know, try and figure out ways to move stuff up here. And then other than that, I mean, it's like, you know, the real pretty slow boat ride that takes you past all the mountains, so they charge extra money just because it could be considered a tourist attraction, even though it's like, we just need to get places.
Right.
But other than that, I mean, we're just gonna chill out. We'll probably go places next year, but it's just not in the budget this year to really go anywhere or do anything.
No, but what about you, Florian?
I have temporarily switched coasts and flown to the other side of the United States to visit family for Christmas, which has kept me pretty busy, and unfortunately also pretty unable to play WoW because rural internet connections, it turns out, are quite terrible.
Your internet connection right now is better than the one you have over on the other coast. At least for Skype call quality purposes.
Yeah, well, better isn't really a high bar to clear in this particular case.
That's fair.
You jet lagged, Florian, from your flight?
Just a little bit. It's not so bad. I had one whole day that I pretty much did nothing but sleep and reset my body's internal clock, so I feel pretty normal.
There you go. Just find that little tiny button on the back of your butt or whatever and just hit that.
The back of your butt?
Yeah. Everything with the clock, and it's got the little tiny button. You need like a safety pin to hit it.
Well, I'm just confused. What is there a difference between the front and the back of my butt?
Oh, no, I guess not.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure. I mean, if there's something about my anatomy, I need to know.
We'll have to get into that. No, I haven't started.
You haven't started?
No, not really. I was thinking about going today. It's Sunday, so it's just a matter of fighting the crowds, and it's kind of fun going out there in the mall and getting crappy little things that, nothing really compelling. My family's pretty cool about just spending time together and not so much about the material stuff. So I don't have to blow anybody away with a sweet Christmas gift. It's just, we'll figure out a couple thoughtful things I'll get over the next 2 or 3 days probably.
My family very much goes, give me a list, tell me what you want. And we'll get creative with a couple other small gifts, but I mean, if we're going to be spending money on each other, it might as well be on things that we know we want.
Right.
So we generally try and give each other an idea of what we'd like to get, and then there's a couple members of the family that are like, just give me fun things, and it's like, okay, sure. I actually I try and do about 95% of my Christmas shopping on Black Friday, just because you do generally save at least a decent amount of money. Not as much as people think, because they're planning to put those things on sale. But it does make it a little bit easier on the pocketbook. But let's take those steps into the news. Wrong music. Oh, God, everything's ruined forever. All right, anyway, thank you for tuning into the news. I apologize for my ineptitude. First thing we have in the news is that Blizzard released a whole bunch of different little hints and teasers and stuff at what their plans were for World of Warcraft in the year 2015. And we will start by saying that Evan was right.
Well, on the right track. I didn't call it.
Evan predicted a couple weeks ago, or last week, I don't know, one of those, that one of the things that they were going to implement into like the Battle.net client was that you'd be able, if they would turn it into more of a
like a social media platform.
Social media platform. And they announced that they have plans to make it where you can send out tweets, even with screenshots, tweets to Twitter, straight from in-game. I personally want to throw things and scream.
Little tantrum. Yeah, I was thinking they were moving in like the kind of social media direction, but I didn't think they would integrate with Twitter or with Instagram or with Facebook. I didn't think they'd make a big partnership like that. That didn't seem right, but evidently that's the direction they're going.
Well, especially Twitter and like Facebook and a couple of those that are very easy to post and stuff on. I don't think it's so much they have to make a partnership with them as so much as like Twitter has available for you the way to embed it into like your website or whatever already to where it automatically connects. And so Blizzard, in really like the last year, has gotten really, really happy and very, very comfortable with Twitter as a whole. They really have enjoyed, talking to us. That seems to be their main outlet for connecting with us is Twitter. They talk to us more on Twitter than they really do almost anywhere else. Aside from, small interviews here and there, AMAs on Reddit. I mean, but they are very consistent in talking to us on Twitter. So it isn't horribly surprising to me that is the method of which they chose. Especially because I didn't ever see them wanting to make a new one because things like Twitter are already so established. This doesn't mean I like it. I can just understand the reasoning for choosing Twitter specifically.
Right. I mean, the only other thing I could have imagined is if they use the Battle.net account link functionality to let you share things with your friends through the Blizzard official forums, because, I mean, you already have to log in, and, I can't imagine it'd be easy to, like, assign your Twitter account to a specific Battle.net account in order to have that linked connectivity. But I'm guessing if they wanted just like the quick tweet style media and sharing screenshots, they didn't want to have to build an entirely new kind of micro forum on the Battle.net servers. They just wanted to take advantage of what's already out there,
Well, and Blizzard, I mean, there's already things that connect to your Battle.net account. Like, Wowhead, your Wowhead account, you can either create one with like an email, or you can create one that is directly connected to your Battle.net account.
Is that right?
Yeah, you log in with your Battle.net account, and it pulls all of your information, all of your character information, and it keeps it constantly updated for you. Now, this is obviously a security risk if you do it this way, because, I mean, technically Wowhead has your information, but Wowhead is, at this point, a very, very large established website, so it wouldn't surprise me if it was just directly plugged into your Battle.net through that, just connecting a Twitter to your Battle.net account.
Yeah, I'm sure it'd be Twitter to Battle.net rather than the other way around. I can't imagine they're willing to take that big of a risk with all their clients' personal information.
Right. Florian, what's your opinion on this?
I'm honestly very surprised by this because Blizzard has a tendency to do its own thing separate from everyone else. Like, you can't buy Blizzard games on Steam, you buy them in the Battle.net client. And
Right.
Blizzard doesn't go to other people's conventions. They have their own convention, BlizzCon. So it's very strange to see them just embrace another social media platform instead of building their own functionality into Battle.net. That seems very contrary to the way Blizzard usually does business. So I'm actually quite surprised by that. And in addition to that, I'm surprised that they're going in this direction at all with the social media integration, because I don't know about everyone else, but I see this as kind of a fad right now where all games have to have social media integration. Like, you can tweet from your Xbox games, or like post to Facebook from Assassin's Creed or something like that. And it seems to me a kind of a trend, kind of like motion control was a few years ago. And Blizzard doesn't usually play into trends like that. They just kind of focus on what they're good at, the core skill of making strong, well-designed games. So for them to go with something that's kind of fad right now is actually kind of weird and seems kind of out of character for them. So I'm kind of wondering, like, who's making this decision and how set in stone is this, or is this just something that they're spitballing and thinking about maybe doing in the future?
No, I'm sure it's going to be implemented at this point. Like, they said that they were working on other things for Battle.net, and I'm positive that now that this is what that is. This is going to happen. If it doesn't, it's because they ran into a very large problem. The reasoning that I can see behind this is life in games right now is born through social media. And what I mean by that is that Hearthstone got incredibly popular very quickly, and that was because of things like Twitch. People being able to connect to the people that are good at the game. So, if now Method can constantly be sending out tweets, or if we can constantly be getting tweets from Swifty, that's even more connectivity to bigger players in the game of World of Warcraft, because they are looking for more ways to integrate into that esports scene, because that is what, even though WoW hasn't ever even gave hints of dying, making it more public, more social friendly, more social outlets gives it more, what's the word I'm looking for? A larger foundation to continue growing on and to be much more stable on. Because, like, right now, they're completely based on the private sector of gamers for World of Warcraft. There's very, very little of World of Warcraft that is public in any way. Whereas, I mean, they have the arena tournaments, but they never got much popularity.
No,
Whereas
not
now,
as much as the as much as the MOBA games,
right,
that are having like filling stadiums in Seoul, Korea.
Yeah, if you can follow the arena teams, though, and see what they're doing, see how they're playing, more than just whatever happens at the world tournaments, then that gives you actually start rooting for somebody more than just, those guys look cool, or I like their name.
And I wonder if eventually you'll be able to live stream to a platform. And I mean, at this rate, why not use Twitch TV from inside your client without any secondary software or anything? Like, can you imagine just hitting a button in your Blizzard UI that will start sending your video stream to your video channel on a separate website?
That'd be pretty awesome. And I think that's the reason that Blizzard's going this way. And as for them choosing Twitter, Blizzard has taken a very, like, people don't see it because people aren't nearly as, like, driven towards finding it. Blizzard has taken a very large turn in the direction that their company is taking things. Because Blizzard is trying to push this big money out of small projects. Hearthstone did not cost them that much. It is not a very big game. It doesn't have that much to it. It's a great game, but the budget that was needed to make Hearthstone compared to what was required to make Warlords of Draenor is ridiculously different. Heroes of the Storm, small team, small project, big profit. Overwatch, again, small team, small budget, small project, big profit. So they're seeing these games that they don't have to make these, essentially their AAA titles like Diablo, which takes a lot of work, a lot of effort. Things like StarCraft, a lot of work, a lot of effort. Those, while they have good payoff, require lots of money, lots of time, and lots of people. These smaller teams and using things that are already established, heavily established like Twitter, enables them to essentially put less effort to get more money. And it doesn't make the product any worse. It's just them being a smarter company. Silence.
Yeah, man, let's talk about Plex.
Okay, sure. We'll move on to the next thing. I just blew that one out of the water. Sorry. The other thing that there's a few things that they announced. Most of them I didn't care about. The two things that I cared about was this Twitter thing, and the other thing that with this. Blizzard announced that they're looking into a way for you to be able to buy a token in the game that is worth game time. So, like, you spend $10 and it's good for, 2 weeks worth of game time, and it's tradable. So you can trade this to other people so that you could essentially... It's a trade money for game time, and then you can trade the game time for whatever else you want to trade it for in the game. A lot of other games do this. The one that immediately comes to my mind is EVE Online. They have a money system. They have a large amount of money, and there's a unit of money called a Plex, which is essentially like $600 million in game term money, and it costs like $15, and if you give $600 million, then you get a month worth of game time, or you can buy $15, which gives you a Plex, which you can trade for 600 million credits in the game. And Blizzard is looking at mimicking this system, except it doesn't sound like you're going to be able to just straight up trade gold to Blizzard for game time. Someone will have to buy the game time, and then you can trade gold to them for it. First thoughts. Florian, we'll start with you.
My first thought is that this is going to be very good, probably. It helps players who don't spend a lot of time playing, but who want to have more gold available, to just essentially buy gold in a legal way that doesn't violate the terms of service, and it can help out other players. I also see it as being an advantage because it can grow the player base. Because there are a lot of people, I know because I see them all the time on the Reddit forums and stuff like that, who would like to play the game, but they can't afford the $15 a month. And a lot of those people just go to private servers. In this case, those players could come to the official Blizzard servers and play on those servers and pay for their play by farming up gold or farming up items and trading it to players who buy this extra game time, which will also have the secondary side effect of hurting gold sellers, which hurts gold farmers, which results in less accounts getting hacked. Like, all in all, as long as they price this and set it up in a way that doesn't destabilize the economy or that doesn't devalue gold too much, I think this is a net win for everyone.
And see, here's the question. Since there it doesn't sound as though there's a way to just straight up between Blizzard trade gold for game time, there won't be an established value on this. The gamers themselves, the economy itself, will set the value for what game time is worth. What do you think it should be worth?
That's very difficult to say. I think it's going to vary wildly from server to server, and that there may be more demand for it on bigger, more populated servers, like, for example, Illidan, than there would be on a smaller server. As for what game time is worth, it's very difficult to say, but since gold farming is not really skilled labor, I would say 1 hour of money that you would get from a real job should be worth at least 3 or 4 hours of gold farming time, at least in my mind.
Right, and Michael and I were discussing this online a little bit when we first got the news, and we came to the conclusion that 1 to 3 or 4 ratio was the most reasonable, like $1 for 3 or 4,000 gold, 1 hour of real-time work for 3 or 4 hours of playing if all you were doing was trying to farm gold.
This is presuming that an hour of farming gives you an hour of gold.
Right, exactly.
And we chose to have this discussion outside of the game because me and Evan really got back and forth a lot on this, and it would have eaten probably about an hour worth of time.
Right.
The thing is, though, is that like currently the gold market for the last few years, I mean, because gold used to be stupid expensive, because gold used to be really difficult to get. Now gold is very easy to get, relatively speaking. Gold right now is roughly $1 per K. So $1 will get you 1,000 gold. So $10, 10K. Obviously, depending on where you go, it's more or less expensive. Sometimes you can get, 12K for $10, or sometimes, some people will only give you 10K for $15. But that's right around where the gold sellers are right now, depending on where you go and if they are having any deals or what have you. So that is essentially a 1-to-1 ratio, which I don't like. It is not. I am somebody who is happy to spend my money on stupid things like WoW Gold if I had the option to. The issue is that is not worth it to me with the cost of things as they are currently. For instance, like a piece of gear right now, save the lowest level ones that people can craft, are normally sitting around anywhere from 20 to 60K depending on the piece. And this would mean if I wanted to spend money to buy that gear, I would be spending anywhere from $30 to $45 or more to get one piece of gear. I mean,
right. To establish this, what is your $1 to 1K price coming from? Is that from like the gold buying websites? Are you doing a little bit of snooping on Chinese servers?
I always look. Don't judge me. I'm always. I believe the one that I was that people were messaging me from most recently. Yeah, it's called itemrock.com. By the way, don't go buy gold because I'm giving you websites. There's a whole bunch of them. None of them are legal. Don't go buy gold. But I constantly get messages in the game and Battle.net invites from people. And then they're like, do you need inventory? And I'm like, what do you mean do I need inventory? Gold right now, $10 for 11K. And I'm like, no, I'm good. Actually, Warlords has given me tons of gold.
Right.
But there's still things that cost large amounts of gold that I do not enjoy farming for gold, by the way. I know there's a whole bunch of people that are at gold cap because they can play the auction house and what have you, but I'm not that person. I enjoy so many things outside the other things inside and outside the game that do not require me to just sit there and buy low, sell high, turn over things that are underpriced on the auction house, because I don't care. I would rather do that in real life with real money.
Yeah, so Florian mentioned that this would kind of destabilize gold buyers and the gold buying market, but I feel like there's a potential to actually strengthen gold buying companies through this system, and that is that you can finally offer some kind of good that has a real world value to consumers rather than just virtual gold. And what I'm saying is I'm playing devil's advocate here, saying that all of a sudden there are these tokens on the in-game market you can buy for gold. Who has a lot of gold? Well, gold buying companies have a lot of gold. If they were to buy all of these tokens, they could sell the tokens themselves and sell WoW Game Time for a better price than Blizzard sells WoW Game Time, and control the market on several different servers through their kind of insidious networks. And turn a bigger profit for this than they were turning before. So they might be licking their chops thinking about this news.
That's a really good point. And I believe it's one that could be accurate.
Right. I mean, without safeguards, because I feel like there are two kind of options here. One is that you get to trade your in-game gold through like an NPC vendor to exchange bind on pickup or bind on account Blizzard time, and you keep it off the free market. It's a gold sink. Blizzard loses a little bit of revenue because they're giving out game time for virtual gold, but perhaps they're gaining, I don't know, they're stabilizing their market a little bit because they feel like their market is flooded with gold and the black market auction house isn't doing a good enough job, or they want to provide an additional service to players just so that people will play that otherwise wouldn't, and when they don't have enough gold to buy the in-game gold time, they're still paying with US dollars.
Well, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, but I don't see them doing that because I feel like the system that we're kind of predicting that they'll use where one person buys the game time at price and then trades it for in-game gold. I mean, for every person that's playing for a month on WoW, somebody's paying that $15 or $12 or whatever the price is going to be. Somebody's paying Blizzard for that game a month. Nobody's getting in for free by Blizzard standards.
Well, and then you run into this thing about, like, what if, I have bought game time from some, I've bought, so let's say these coins are worth like 5 days or whatever they end up being worth. What happens if I buy a coin, forget that it's in my bag, and then my subscription expires? I have 5 days sitting in my bag, but I can't log in to use it. That's going to create a ticket influx, which Blizzard, we already know that their support system is overwhelmed with tickets.
Right. It might just be you need a little bit of that foresight to use it and apply it to your account before your game time actually runs out.
Well, and the other thing, like you were talking about, like with the gold buyers buying the gold and buying the time and selling it for a better price, I mean, that's one, like, double. I know Blizzard doesn't get the money, but that's double dip in funds right there, which is rude. But on the same time, like, we also don't know what the exchange rate is. I mean, right now it's $15 for a month, but it might be that $15 gets you 3 5-day coins. We don't actually know what the actual what your little in-game token is gonna be.
Yeah, that's true. I'd be surprised if they made it very much different than paying an actual subscription rate.
Right. It was just something else that's in there, and like I feel like there should be a way for Blizzard to establish what it's worth. I know that they want it to be something that the economy can control, but at the same time, like Florian stated, it'll vary wildly from server to server, whichever server is worth the most, people who want the gold will go there. I mean,
yeah, I suppose, but they don't really allow gold transfer across servers, and I'm thinking that if your goal in using the system is to pay real life money to buy something that's valuable to sell to players so you can earn a ridiculous amount of in-game gold, then you're going to do it on your main server. I mean, I guess if you had that much or that cash to spend, you might transfer your character over to a lucrative server and earn a lot of gold that way and then transfer back to the server you actually want to play on. But
this could mean the difference, though, between $10 buying you 10K and $10 buying you 40K.
Yeah, I'm not sure. But then there's also the point of people being able to get a massive amount of gold by buying in, so to speak, destabilizing the economy. Florian said it would be a good system if Blizzard can kind of prevent any kind of economic destabilization, but if it's just a free tradable object, I don't understand how they could impose any kind of restrictions on the item itself.
Well, and like, for instance, like me, I would love to be able to do this so I could buy things that are expensive in the game that you can only buy with gold, like the Alliance bike or the Grand Expedition yak. Most of the things that I'm going to be naming are mounts. Or like the other, or even stuff from the black market auction house. I know that is supposed to be like a gold sink for these people that have tons, but I find it really rude that they put things that everyone is gonna want in that black market auction house. They put mounts that you can no longer get in there. They put gear, transmog gear. We know tons of people that love transmog gear. Doesn't mean they are always rich. put tier 3 transmog in there. You know how many people would love to have tier 3 warrior, the awesome dreadnought shoulders, the blue glowing skull shoulders from the original Naxxramas? But those sell for normally gold cap. And that's rude. It sucks. I want another way to get those. I would love those. I mean, and now they're talking about other things that they're possibly going to put in the black market auction house, like the original orange tiger from Zul'Gurub. I wanted that forever.
Nice.
I did it every week since Wrath came out, and I was able to do it. Never got it. Cataclysm came, and I wasn't able to do it anymore. I still want it. And I would pay money for it. I would give you $100 for it. But guess what? $100 might only buy me $100K, which isn't enough to buy that from the black market auction house.
Right.
And I shouldn't have to pay that much money to get something like that. And that's why I would like to see the exchange rate be larger, but it's established by a community. Which the community could end up making it be worth nothing. Especially when there's so many people. Because I know these people that play the auction house, it is technically very easy for them to make money. However, there's not room for very many of those type of people on servers because of the way that type of generation works.
Right. Now, it is a kind of a different economic game for people who are working at gold cap or have multiple characters at gold cap. I mean, I don't think either or any of us are really good auction house tycoons. I just enjoy other parts of the game more. No offense to that lifestyle at all. But yeah, it seems like when you get up there, I'm going to just throw a wild guess out there because I don't know anything about the community, but maybe on a medium-sized server, there are 5 or 6 personalities that are doing the majority of the trading, kind of like the WoW equivalent of the 1%. And they're the people who get to enjoy the black market auction house, putting gold cap on pieces of heroic high mall gear, that kind of thing. And I don't think Blizzard is necessarily giving us a free way to buy into that community, because that could certainly destabilize the economy if, for example, they made these tokens really valuable for like a 60-day token that you could buy for $20 or something like that.
God.
Those 60-day tokens would go for probably gold cap if they were placed on the black market auction house, for example.
And I don't like that. I want to be able to get the cool things too without having to be that guy. I don't mind spending money on it, but if this is supposed to be the way that we are supposed to be able to turn real-life dollars into in-game currency, then there should be a way that these things that are supposed to... that my train of thought just left because I'm getting frustrated.
Yeah, it's a frustrating, complicated issue, and I think that we're being shafted a little bit by the vagueness of these kind of, like you said at the beginning, teaser items. We don't have very many details on these either. They're talking about the heirloom tab. We don't have very many details on that. Blood Elf, they gave us a Blood Elf model preview already. The ability to send tweets from the game, we don't know how that's going to work, how it's going to integrate with the Twitter account at all yet, but it stokes the imagination. I think our imagination is getting the better of us when we start playing Devil's Advocate a little bit too hard and start to, starting to raise our fists and grab our pitchfork, so to speak.
It'll definitely be a just wait and see type instance. I just don't like it because I know that I'm probably not going to be happy with the outcome. Because...
Yeah, just generally the theme of the thing, and I'm with you, is that you start making US dollars or real life currency and in-game gold mingle a little bit, and it's kind of like the beginning of the end, in my opinion, and that's overly apocalyptic, but it's just how I kind of feel the situation going.
I just want to be able to buy things like things on the black market auction house for money. Like, you know how much I would love it if Blizzard just said, okay, so this is going up on the black market auction house today. Anyone can buy it for $50. We'll sell as many of them as people want to sell for $50, or you can bid on it with gold. I realize this has nothing to do with the game time tokens at all, but if I see that orange tiger on the freaking black market auction house, I'm going to flip my shit.
I think people really accuse Blizzard of a cash grab at that point because it's so lucrative and they could charge almost as much as they wanted to without any real regard for the value of that specific item.
I would pay it. I don't care.
Yeah.
Blizzard is a company. If it'll make money, they will do it as long as it doesn't severely hurt the game. Right,
they really have to watch out for their reputation, though, especially in the climate of MMOs with a whole lot of free-to-plays. The free-to-play market's really kind of variant in their strategies for earning enough to cover development costs and lining the producers' pockets. It really just, there's a lot of scummy MMOs out there, and there are some really good, noble ones. I think Blizzard's trying to keep their conscience clean with their subscription model and trying to keep the microtransactions to a minimum.
This game time token thing, though, already runs the risk of causing that anyway. Because with things being traded for gold and you being able to buy these and trade these for gold or gear or what have you, this immediately creates a pay-to-win environment. It obviously is not the way that it'll work as a whole, but it will be an option for a large number of people of saying, I can just spend $50 and get my 3 pieces of 665 gear from other players. Sounds like a good idea to me. Or however much it ends up exchanging for. Obviously, with raids and stuff, just having the gear doesn't make you good. You have to not suck. But it will enable a sub-layer of people who are trying to pay to win.
Right, and the balancing act of trying to make sure that you can't get a severe advantage by paying a couple dollars. It has to be not too much, not too little, I feel.
It worries me. Moving along, though. A very recent post from something somewhere shows that the RWow subreddit is the 5th or 6th, give or take, most positive subreddit on Reddit. Which I can agree with this a lot. I mean, the WoW Reddit subreddit is, for the most part, very popular. I mean, obviously you say something rather offensive or very rude, they just completely smash you into the ground. But for the most part, this is pretty appropriate. I mean, and it's surprising, too, because the other subreddits that are up there surprised me. One of the highest being the Not Safe for Work subreddit.
Right.
Other ones being a Pokemon trading subreddit, Build a PC subreddit, Hip Hop Head subreddit. Okay. And they didn't include subreddits that don't allow you to downvote if you're not subscribed. Basically anything that would keep it from being a true open-ended opinion-based. Do we know what this is actually based on? Is this based on like upvotes, or what is this based on?
I think it's relative positivity as in the proportion of upvotes to downvotes. I can try to find some more information while you guys talk about it, though.
Okay. What do you think on this, Florian?
I'm not really sure what I think about it, because positivity is a very hard thing to quantify. And once again, without understanding where they got their numbers from, I would say it's very difficult to say anything about it. The only thing I can say for sure is that the Reddit WoW community is definitely a lot more positive than the official WoW forums.
Oh, and God, yeah, those are horrible.
Yeah, in general, I haven't been Redditing for long, only for a few months, actually. But in my experience, there don't really seem to be that many, I would say, not positive communities. This, once again, is my very limited experience. I'm sure there's some crazy subreddit out there. But, yeah, it seems like a pretty positive place. People, when they ask questions, or especially when we have, like, new people who don't know what they're doing, they generally get pretty positive responses, and they get good advice. Whereas in other communities that I've been in, you can be a newbie and ask simple questions and get flamed into the ground. So I feel the WoW subreddit, just as a community, is generally pretty positive. How it ranks on Reddit, I have no idea.
Well, I'm looking at this, and, like, the source from this little, like, it says minmaxr.com, source reddit.com, average positivity of submissions of positive words divided by words. And
right, I'm looking at this now.
5%.
So what they've done is created a lexicon of positive words. I'm scrolling through the list right now. There's posted words like affectionate, ambitious, economical, entrancing. These are words part of the list that are considered to be positive words, exemplar, exalted. And now as we look at the kind of WoW lexicon, the top post on this news item did specify that words like wow, talents, protection, agility, strength, mastery. These are all words that are considered positive words in this list.
So we're cheating is what you're saying.
Yeah, when you think about the word WoW being a positive WoW, how many times do we say the word WoW in the WoW subreddit? I think it seems like it's cheesed a little bit.
Okay, so we're cheating. I get it. All right, awesome.
But that's not to say that we don't use a whole lot of these positive words and friendly language and dealing with one another in our community forum here.
No, it's very true. If you want a good place to actually have a civilized discussion about stuff, the WoW subreddit's the place to go. Do not go to the official forums because there is nothing there but angry people and flamers.
Right.
There are a few civilized people, but there are not many.
Yeah, I think the difference is that on message boards, and I see this a lot in the MMO Champions forum as well, when you have a kind of negative tune, especially about classes, like specific classes, what's wrong with this spec, what's wrong with that talent tier, they kind of get repeated ad nauseum, and they stay on the front page for a really long time, whereas in our Reddit forum or Reddit style, it's more of kind of an image board on our World of Warcraft or our WoW, where a lot of the front page posts are screenshots of something that's funny. You get a couple upvotes, you tell a few jokes, you explain the similar situations you've seen in your own experience, and then they get kind of, it moves along to page 2, and then we have a whole lot of turnover. So we don't have as much of a propensity for the really negative talk to stick around for as long. And I think that's, I mean, you miss out on a whole lot of the dialogue you get on a forum, like the important dialogue, the game-changing dialogue, but it keeps it a little bit more civil on the whole. I think the long conversations that do stick around the front page are generally about important news items that are discussed while they're relevant, and then we move on.
Well, and even this is obviously not based on anything at all besides my opinion. The other thing about this, on Reddit specifically, I think might have a difference in this, is that the WoW Reddit you have to go look for, whereas the official forums are just something that is posted there as a place for you to speak on. The other thing on this is Reddit, its formatting is very different. The forums, every single post is, like, every reply is very big, very personalized, very large, very in your face. And I don't just mean, like, the threads. I mean, like, comments. Big, in your face. Whereas Reddit, it's almost like a chat room that isn't at real time. Everything is much smaller. You don't have so much big flashiness on the comment section. It's really just about there's so much more at once rather than just seeing one person's thing at a time. You can see a full conversation rather than, especially on like the forums, every single person's response is this big block that takes up the entire screen. I have nothing to base this on besides my opinion, obviously, but it just seems something like that to me because, like, when I'm on the WoW forums, everything's so big. I read everything, and so, like, when I read someone's negative whatever, it's in my face.
Right.
Whereas,
Plus,
go ahead.
Every post has the portrait of the person you're logged into and your achievement points and your guild and your server. I mean, necessarily every post takes up a big space on your screen, so I guess everybody just gets used to filling all of the space that's afforded to their comment with a lot of text as well. Whereas in Reddit, one little tiny comment is just a couple pixels tall, you know?
Yeah, and if it's negative, if you don't want to listen to it or read it or respond to it, you can just move on to the next one. Or see if someone has already ripped them a new one.
Right.
Because, in the forums, you have to scroll down and look and see if someone designated a response to that comment, whereas in Reddit, it's formatted so that responses to that comment are on there, right below it, and you can just go, oh, someone already told me stupid, moving along.
So, do you think that keeps it a little bit more civil because when somebody sees a post they don't agree with, they just reply and tack it onto the end of the thread rather than saying, oh, they've already been addressed, and moving on?
That, and also because with the ability to downvote, negative things or bad things or unproductive things generally get hidden away.
Right, and then the same thing is also happening right now in the Blizzard official forums, if you didn't know.
Oh, are they changing it?
Yeah,
because for the most part right now, it's just order of when it was posted.
Yeah, it's order when it was posted, but if a comment got too many downvotes, I don't know what they call them over there, it does get hidden, I've seen.
Well, regardless of whether it's because we're cheating or not, I'm happy to know that we're positive. One last piece of news for us. Today is the last week for the RG giveaway. So if you're just tuning in to the Castbar for the first time, we are giving away the new RG pet while its funds are still being given to the American Red Cross. The rules you can find on our Facebook. Just go to Facebook and search the Castbar. There's a big post there with all the rules for entry. There's ways to enter through Facebook, Twitter. Leave us an iTunes review. Doesn't have to be 5 stars. We just want some feedback so we know if we're doing a good or bad job. We also have been asking a question each week on the recordings here. If you would like to get bonus entries from the previous week's questions, you will have to go back to the previous episodes. This week's question, we decided to give you a very easy one as a thank you for listening and just thanks for being here and sticking it out with us. The question is, when did you start playing WoW and why? Real easy. Send us either a message on Facebook, or you can even send us a tweet on Twitter for this one, or send us an email at thecastbar@gmail.com. We will be announcing the winners in 1 week on December 28th. So after everyone's holidays and all that, hopefully we're wrapping up a little bit, we'll be announcing the winners on episode number 7. So tune into that one to find out if you've won. And other than that, have a good holiday season. We're going to move into a closer look. Welcome to a Closer Look. Closer Look is a section that we take something in Warcraft, whether it's a feature or some change, or it could be relatively almost anything, and we really break it down and really just zoom in on it and get a little bit more detail in it rather than just going over the highlighted cliff notes of whatever the details on it might be. This week we're going to take a closer look at gear in Warlords. Gear itself and gearing up has taken a very large turn with this expansion. A lot of changes have been made between the removal of reforging and gems being a lot more rare, and the changes to enchanting and how you get gear, where you can get gear. And there's just so much here that we just really wanted to take some time to address it and really give you a little bit of insight on what you need to do to get the gear that might be most appropriate for you. The first step on this is finding out what's good for your class. We've stated before that every class and every spec, you should be able to find an ability in your spellbook that's a passive that says that you get 5% more of a stat. So like me personally, for Shadow Priests, I have Mastermind. It's a passive. I gain 5% more haste stat from all sources. You should have one of these, and this is a very good baseline for what stat your class might want. Sometimes there's extra ones here and there. There's places you can go, whether it's Icy Veins, you can even ask on the forums. You should be able to look up some information on Wowhead, on Noxic. We'll also have this information on what stats you actually want. And we're going to just go in right now on the different places to get gear and what might be best for you and where, as well as a lot of gear right now takes time to get. Evan, first steps, please.
Well, first step is hit level 100, and when you hit level 100, we're going to talk about PvE players for the majority of this, I imagine, because I'm not sure if either of us are really digging into the PvP system yet.
I can touch on it. I know how it works.
Okay.
And well, we'll touch on that later.
Sure. After you hit level 100, I think the very first thing that you really ought to do, one of the most helpful things to me while leveling up is getting the War Mill or Dwarven Bunker if you're Alliance. It gives an increased chance for you to get random upgrades to quest loot and rare monster loot as you're questing around. and also the upgrades will be more potent. So in Nagrand, after you hit level 100, you can finish up your entire quest line there, and a lot of those pieces can be upgraded into 620 or 630 blues and epics, which I think is pretty helpful. The very first milestone I think you're trying to hit is the 610 item level for heroic dungeons. And then after you hit the heroic dungeon qualification, then you can of course go in for that heroic gear, 630 or 636 Warforged.
I'd also like to point out that the War Mill / Dwarven Bunker is only really worth it in Nagrand, because this is going to be the level 99, the level 100 gear. Before then, you'll still get upgrades, you're just going to replace them. So if you haven't built it yet and you're still in Spires of Iraq or what have you, you don't really need to worry about it until you get to Nagrand, because that is the essentially end game questing gear, and that's what you want to be upgraded.
Well, yeah. The other method of getting gear, of course, you want to go after your rare spawns when you have your War Mill, Dwarven Bunker, try to get those big upgrades. You want to finish quest lines, and then you have profession crafting, which by the time you hit level 100, if you built a profession building at level 91 or 92, then after the time, if you're leveling at an easy pace, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 days, or if you're slower, the slower the better in this case. If it takes you 2 weeks, if you're leveling up an alt, for example, or if you don't have very much time to play during the week, you'll have enough of this bind on pickup profession grade material that you'll be using to craft your level 640 stage 1 profession epics, which cost about 100 materials per day or per item, or 150 I think for some armor pieces.
I don't know if anyone I haven't seen any that cost 150. They're probably out there though. The thing on this is that the profession gear is heavily time gated. So start on it as soon as you can. You can always buy it with gold. The thing to note is that of the crafted gear, you can only wear 3 pieces. So you can't just buy and make all of the gear for your character. There's a limit on 3 pieces of Warlord's crafted gear.
Right. And that's Blizzard's intention, to kind of get you to get your gear from all these different sources. The raiding is one. When you get to heroic dungeons, if you finally get your item level up enough to do looking for raid dungeon or to get in the high mall normal, heroic mythic, there's an unlimited number of pieces of gear you can have from those sources.
Another option, at least right now, you need to be item level 615. You can get a 640 epic helm guaranteed from the Molten Core anniversary event. That's only lasting until January 15th. Is that right?
I'm not positive.
It's somewhere.
It's in your
middle of January.
It's in your in-game, or in your in-game calendar will mark the end of the 10th anniversary event.
Oh, January 5th. So you got about 2 weeks.
So is the stats on those helmets randomized, or are they specific?
They're specific, and hilariously enough, have fire resistance on them.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm not sure how, with the stat squish and stuff, how much this fire resistance actually counts for, but it's on there.
That is a little bit funny.
I have the cloth one, the Crown of Power. It gives me 139 crit, 93 haste, and 63 fire resistance. And I don't believe these can have bonuses or anything on them. I am very certain that they are what they are.
The next method of getting gear is a follower missions. Of course, as you do follower missions, and especially if you have a salvage yard and a war mill, you're able to get these upgrades to improve a level 100 follower's gear level. And once you hit level 100, I think you can start getting item level 615 pieces or tokens that you can turn into player gear. When you have 2 followers at level 630, you can start getting, keep everything straight. A level 100 follower can achieve a level 615 player item token mission. A level 615 follower can give you item tokens that are level 630 for your player. And if your followers are I'm getting mixed up on
here. At 630, we'll give you missions that give you 645, and if you hit 645 item level for your followers by upgrading them, then you have a chance to get the High Mall Raid mission, which will give you a piece of gear based on your current progression in raiding.
And we've just unlocked the scenario for this. You are going to get normal level High Mall gear until you've killed 15 normal level High Mall bosses. It doesn't matter if you kill the same one twice. You don't have to kill with the king guy, the Imperator Margok. You don't have to kill the end boss. As long as you have 15 boss kills in normal mode, then you'll start getting the High Mall missions for heroic gear.
And it doesn't matter if you killed them that week or not. If you literally wanted to find 15 different groups to kill Kargath, who's really easy, kill him 15 times, you're good to go. It'll start showing up heroic. Kill heroic Kargath 15 times, it'll start showing mythic. You can't get higher than mythic currently. These, from what people are saying, have a 2 to 2.5 week internal cooldown. So if you see one, do your best to get as high a percentage to clear it as possible. And then after that, you won't see one for 2.5 weeks, roughly.
I didn't realize that, and that's good information, too. I was waiting for mine to come back around. I guess it'll come back around after the next reset.
Was your first one successful?
It was not. I failed at 91%.
Wow. I am
But I only
sorry.
I only had 2 or 3 different level 100 or epic level followers, so that was kind of a stretch for that first week. I should have waited, but I don't know. I didn't want it to disappear.
Okay, quick question. For that. Do you have to have 1 follower at 645 or 2 at 645 for it to show up?
You have to have 2, as far as I've heard, at any threshold. At the 615, 630, or 645, you have to have 2 followers at that minimum item level in order to unlock that tier of missions.
Darn it, I need to go upgrade another follower. I have 1 at 645 because I'm hoarding all the upgrade things because that's the strategy, by the way. You get it to where it'll show up and you hoard a whole bunch of the little upgrade things. You figure out who will be most successful on it, and then you upgrade only those to go on to the mission.
Correct.
Florian, do you want to talk to us about Apexis gear as well as gear from Heroics?
Sure. The Apexis gear is pretty much the guaranteed gear, kind of like the Justice or Valor gear of times past. It's something that's not randomized. You simply buy from a vendor by using Apexis crystals, which you can farm up by doing the Apexis crystal daily, which you'll get every day in your garrison, and it'll give you 800 or 1,000 Apexis crystals. And you can also earn Apexis crystals in smaller amounts through doing crafting work orders or mine or herbalism work orders in your garrison. The main drawback of Apexis gear is that it pretty much has set stats, and the stats on the gear tend to be all over the place because the gear is designed to be usable by different specs of whatever class you have. So, for example, the helm might have great stats for one spec, whereas the chest has great stats for another spec. So it can be kind of all over the place, but I feel like it's mostly intended to just be filler gear until you get proper raid gear.
I've run into that exact scenario there. I had my crafted shoulders and my crafted helm from blacksmithing. The crafted shoulders on the first try, luck of the draw, got my 2 secondary stats. The helm was haste and versatility, not too good for me. The Apexis helm is perfect for my specs, so I just went and traded. I got the Apexis helm that has my perfect stats, and for my third piece of blacksmithing crafted gear, I made some boots instead because it was one of my last pieces of blue gear.
Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say it's you get to mix and match. You get to say the Apexis gear is kind of wacky, but the gloves are really good for me. So I'm going to focus my build. I'm going to change my crafted gear slots to avoid the gloves. I'll use the Apexis for gloves, that kind of thing.
Another thing that I would heavily, heavily recommend on these, especially the crafted gear, if you are going to be doing any raiding at all, take a moment and look at the first few bosses in High Mall. So, like, for me, for example, I can go into the Dungeon Finder is perfectly fine. Choose my class, choose my spec. I see that Kargath drops a cloth hood. So I should not make a cloth hood because I will probably kill him a lot. So I don't want to make something that is readily viable for me. Next, looking at the Butcher, he has shoulders and hands. Tectus has bracers, and Brackenspore has a chest. So the thing that I'm seeing, Twin Ogron has legs. The thing that I'm seeing is I haven't seen a waist. So, like, maybe my first piece I should make should be a belt, because that's the farthest away from me. That's the deepest boss, you know. Take a look at what is going to be more difficult for you to get. If you're trying to min-max and get the best gear you can as quick as you can in the most rightly fashion, you don't want to make something and then Kargath will drop a piece that you're just like, well, this one's technically better now. That's unfortunate. So just take a moment, take a look before you decide what you're going to make. See what is going to be really easily available. Like, for me particularly, I don't have a pair of shoes available for me until Korag, the second to last boss.
Right.
So, if I'm working on getting my priest is not a tailor. I do have the tailoring emporium, though, and I'm working on building up the hex weave. But the first thing I'm going to make is going to be shoes, because I will not be able to get a pair of 640 shoes for quite some time. If 640 or better shoes for quite some time if I'm just going through the normal raid. Because, I mean, I don't have a raid group, so I'm pugging, and if I get to the second last boss through a pug, I'm excited.
Right. It's just about hedging your bets, trying to look into the future, see what you're going to get, probably. When I've noticed the garrison missions, I've only gotten tokens from the garrison missions for item level 645 gear for shoulders, neck, chest, and weapon so far, so I'm not sure if there are only a limited number of slots you can fill with a garrison mission token, or what. So you can kind of do a little bit of research. WoW has really great research for that, and try to use that information to hedge your bets, figure out which bosses in Heimel you're most likely to down, that kind of thing.
The last thing is that if you are trying to get gear through heroic raiding, heroic dungeons, this is going to be the most difficult for you to get the gear you want. They made a change to where, because of everyone wants their stat, a boss will drop 6 different belts for cloth wearers that have different stats on them. So not only do you have to have the boss drop gear for you, you have 6 chances that it's going to be 6 different pieces. Instead of, in Heroic Dungeon it used to be, he drops, 1 or 2 pieces of gear you might get. So you know which bosses you need. Now, you will always need this boss until you get lucky and he drops the right piece. The unfortunate thing about this is you can only kill him when it queues up.
Yeah, the only thing is that, it's a little bit of a good thing too, because if you want heroic level pants, and that's the slot you have to fill because you're still running around with your Spires of Eric green quest pants on, you can get heroic pants from multiple bosses in different dungeons too. So if you run your Grimworld Depot lockout, the second boss drops your heroic pants, and they drop with haste and versatility. That's terrible for you. You run UBRS, and the third boss drops heroic pants, and it's got crit and mastery that drops for you. The stats are randomized, but you got multiple chances per day to run the specific dungeons to get the specific pieces you want, thankfully. And even when you have all of your heroic dungeon gear filled out, you still have the pleasure of trying to run again for the tertiary stats, like Leech and Speed and Indestructible and Gem slots. And then you also can go for the heroic Warforged gear, which is item level 636, which is a little bit of an item level boost if you want to get your item level up for the, looking for raid or to meet raid leaders' requirements in the open group channel,
Now, I have one last question for you guys on this topic. This is all because they took out reforging and all of that stuff that we used to have to do as general upkeep in Mists of Pandaria. Do you think this system is better, where we have these items we can craft that reroll the stats on our crafted gear? We have 8 different cloth chests that'll drop from a boss in a heroic dungeon. Do you think this is better or worse than just needing to do just a little bit of reforging to make the piece better for you?
I would say probably worse. Random gear can be really great, in games like Diablo, for example, where the game is built around farming for gear and getting all kinds of random drops and maybe finding something really awesome you can use. But WoW is not that type of game, and when you get an item that is a flat item level upgrade, that should be better, but equipping it would be a net loss to your DPS or health or whatever it is you need, then that's really disappointing, and it's really frustrating. And in general, I don't think it's a good idea. It would have been a little less painful if we still had reforging, so you could take a piece of equipment that would otherwise be irredeemable and make it somewhat useful. But in general, I don't feel it's a significant improvement. It's worse, if anything. The only consolation is that it would appear that raid gear does not have the same randomized stats. So for most players, it's just going to be a short time of slogging through heroics until they can get to raids, and then they can leave this randomized stat nonsense in the past.
Which I think it's unfortunate that you have to do it that way, that this random bit pushes you into the thing where you can actually search for specifically the gear that's good for you. And then the quick touch on PvP. PvP gear hasn't changed a whole lot. Honor will buy you honor gear. You can do things like rated battlegrounds, arenas, as well as Ashran to get your conquest points, which will buy you your conquest gear, which I believe is 660 right now for this season. Which, incidentally, with the change to PvP gear, they took off PvP stats, so PvP power and resilience and stuff don't exist anymore. This gear is perfectly good for PvE rating. So if you are a PvP guy, you want to do it on the offhand or whatever, and you get a couple of 660 pieces, and they're good stats for you, those are perfectly acceptable to go into raids with. And anyone who disagrees with you, they're not worth your time, because there is literally no downside right now to using PvP gear in a PvE raid. Until you can get better PvE pieces, the PvP gear is perfectly acceptable. It is great, in fact. Some PvP pieces are best in slot over any PvE piece you can get, unless you start getting into like heroic Warforged pieces. The other option, which this is upsetting to a lot of PvP people, but this is a way that you also are able to get conquest pieces, is through your Gladiator Sanctum. There's a way, like once a day, that there's a big like 50-man arena. The winner of that arena gets a random a random piece of conquest gear. It's rough, I will tell you right now. It is not easy to win. More often than not, classes like Death Knight win because they're just better in those settings. It's really rough, and a lot of people don't think it's fair because it's giving these people that are better in these instances a PvP gear advantage, but that's a whole nother bag of bones. The other option is that it's like your first Ashran win each week gives you a lockbox that has a chance to have a piece of conquest gear in it. Other than that, just keep hitting your weekly cap and getting your conquest gear as you can, and good luck. Let's take it into the mailbag. Welcome to the mailbag. You can send your questions to the castbar@gmail.com. Send us a tweet at Castbar Podcast, or call and leave us a voicemail at 508-738-2278. We only have one question this week, and it comes from Jason F. And his question is very simple and asks, have garrisons been a success? Now, this could mean a lot of things on if it has been a success. What are we actually going to define as a success, guys? Well, first, what do we think the garrison's mission was to achieve? Like, what was their goal when they brought out garrisons?
Well, if I remember correctly, with all the hype, because we had a lot of time before Warlord released during Siege of Orgrimmar, to kind of pour over Blizzard news releases, because everybody wanted a little bit of a glimpse into what garrisons were going to be like if we weren't lucky enough to get the beta invite. And I seem to remember the overwhelming kind of theme is that Blizzard wanted to have a kind of new, compelling gameplay that was different from anything we'd seen before, and also they wanted something that was kind of an alternative to the model of the daily quests that we had for the Golden Lotus and the other factions in Mists of Pandaria. And I think they wanted to create a certain kind of ambience with the mood in Warlords. They wanted to tell a strong story that we were kind of there building an army, defeating the Iron Horde. And I think if we're playing and we're feeling like this is compelling gameplay, if we feel like we are in the story and we are the main character defeating the Iron Horde on our own, then I think that would be a success on Blizzard's part.
And have they achieved that?
Well, honestly, I wasn't in beta at all, so I was completely surprised by the garrison system. I didn't dig too much into the fine details. I wanted to kind of experience it organically from the beginning. I like being kind of naive going into the thing because it's a discovery process, and I really get a kick out of that. I think that it's completely new gameplay. It doesn't resemble anything of the past. It totally gives a different level of interaction with the professions. And the garrison follower missions were really new. I felt like it was kind of like the same kind of secondary system as pet battling as far as the inner complexity and the collection aspect of it. But it's a little bit more approachable and with more real rewards, and there's more worthwhile to spend time doing. I was absolutely hooked from the very first day I started when the expansion released.
Are you still?
I think I've gotten to the point where my garrison missions have stopped being as rewarding as more of my followers are level 100 in epic quality. And my gear level has gotten up high enough to where I don't need the 615 or 630 tokens except for disenchanting. So I'm not obsessively running missions anymore like I was the first 2 or 3 weeks. But I still am keeping a really close eye on it. I'm leveling alts. I'm digging into their systems too. I'm prioritizing what I'm going to do as far as daily tasks and chores. I've got my garrison up to level 3, so I only have to do the work orders every couple days. And so as I'm getting stronger in the game, the role of my garrison to my gameplay is also evolving. And I'm looking forward to what Blizzard's going to be doing in the future content patches as far as expanding the functionality.
What about you, Florian? What is your opinion on garrisons now that we've had them for a while and things have really things at this point are settling out from the expansion launch?
I think so far they've been a total success. I've heard very few people have complaints about the garrison saying, I don't want it. I think it's given us an interesting alternative way of gearing our characters, especially for players who don't have time to play WoW as much as the rest of us. They have the option of gearing up through the follower system or the new time-gated crafting, which is perfectly set up for players who don't play the game a lot. So it seems to me like it's been very successful in giving people more avenues to get gear, more avenues to be able to play the game without having to put a ton of time into it, and sort of, I guess, helping out the casuals. I hate to use that term, but that's essentially one of the things that's done really well. And of course, it was integrated into the storyline very well as well. So on the whole, I would say the garrisons were a success. They did out what they set to do. They did what they set out to do. They added new, interesting features to the game and new ways to gear up. And on the whole, there was no real loss.
I don't know if I would define them as a success. I think that they have taken some things out of the game. Blizzard was pushing for us to be they want more life in the world, yet they give us something that pulls us completely out of it. I mean, people spend more time in their garrisons than like Storm Shield and War Spear are relatively dead most of the time when I go there. There's a couple people running around, sure, but the Shrine, packed. Dalaran, packed. Stormwind, packed during those expansions. This outpost now, which is supposed to be our essential home base, is dead. And I believe this is the initial reason why they decided to not put the extra effort in to make whatever the town is in Frostfire Ridge and the Temple of Karabor our actual home cities, because they realized people aren't going to be there. I think that they are a very fun system out the get-go. They're very fun when you're leveling up, and as the story goes on and through the game and all of that, going into where it's back to that raiding environment, though, they are much less enjoyable, because now it's really less about expanding your garrison and more about just its upkeep and the chores involved in doing so. I know people have been questioning on whether garrisons are going into the next expansion or not, or anything like that. Blizzard says they're going to continue to do things with the garrisons through the patches, but I think in the end, the garrisons will be a larger bust than success by the end of the expansion.
Yeah, I see what you're saying as far as people getting kind of bored a little bit with the novelty. Like I was saying about how I'm less engaged in my garrison now than I was at the very beginning, first few weeks. I can imagine towards the end of the final raid tier in this expansion, garrisons offering almost no benefit really when we hit the inter-expansion phase. So that's a little bit worrisome to be looking forward to the future. I think the best part of the garrison is already over, but then again, that is subject to what Blizzard does during the content patches during Warlords. Now, yeah, there's a little bit of lack of a compelling gameplay. I think having you stuck in your garrison, there are only a limited number of things you can do, and especially if you're working on alts, it can be kind of you do most of your garrison work while you're playing at the beginning, and then you don't have very much time left over for doing anything else. Luckily for us, there isn't a whole lot else to do, really, as endgame content goes, on a weekly basis, besides the world bosses and fishing and various profession things.
For me, personally, though, when I look at this, so much of the garrison is worthless. Like, the profession buildings, besides being a way to get over a little bit of this time gate, none of them do anything. Like, the salvage building is really cool, but that's because that's the only thing that really pushes me to continue to do missions, is I want more salvage crates so I can get more cool things out of the salvage box. I got scarlet wristbands the other day, by the way. For anyone curious of the kind of stuff that you can get out of your salvage crates, straight up scarlet wristbands, not in the game anymore. The original mail set scarlet wristbands. I have them. Don't know what I'm doing with them yet, but I have them. You can't get them anymore. Good luck. But when I look at the buildings, so many of them are useless. All of the profession buildings don't do really squat anything.
Yeah, I mean, you have the Enchanter's Hut, which gives you your weapon, illusions. If you want butterflies in your weapon, for example. And I think those kind of secondary benefits are what kind of give it its lasting or its staying power. I know for the Forge, you get a little buff that summons a Guardian every time you take damage, or every couple of times you take damage out in the real world. So if you do a lot of soloing, if you do Steam Weedle, rep grinding, and you're doing a lot of outdoor stuff where you need a little bodyguard, there's that. There's also the barracks for a legitimate bodyguard. The stables with the mount speed buff and the no days and interact with objects is good for farming and stuff like that, and questing around. So I think all of these buildings have like a kind of secondary thing that helps them stay relevant, stay useful. This when the primary benefit of like having the gear or the buy and pick up materials or the Iron Horde scraps, when that benefit wears off later on in the expansion.
Then what?
Well, I mean, we'll still get to transmog our weapon enchants, and we'll still get to do our farming for our mounts and things. And
after you get all the mounts from the stables, you don't need the stable anymore.
Well, you should get the 20% run speed buff on your mount, and that's what I'm saying is going to kind of stick around as being the benefit that will help you justify keeping that stables there.
It just doesn't seem like it just seems so diminutive.
It's a very small threshold buff that doesn't really seem worth it. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, thank you. And they just don't feel power to me. Like they just feel like just buildings. Like there's just nothing in them. Like the illusion thing. Why couldn't you just stick that on the transmog guy? Because then after that, besides the time gate, the Enchanter's Hut is truly useless. Like, I'm trying to pick medium buildings. I don't like any of the medium buildings. Lumber Mill, blug. Lunarfall Inn, after you've done the quest from it, I mean, you can get the treasure hunter missions. All they do is give you like 50 extra gold. Blah. If you need a headhunter, that takes 2 weeks to probably get the couple things you're missing. Then the end's done. Barn, all it really gives you is fur. I guess later it does give you the savage bloods, but once the only thing it gives you is savage bloods. I guess that's the most worthwhile one. Trading post, no. Gladiator Sanctum, only good if you're... It's really awesome if you're PvP, actually. I'll give that one a thumbs up. But for the most part, when I'm picking a medium building, like on an alt, I'm just like, none of these are good. Salvage yard, I mean, the small plots besides the salvage yard, I'm literally only picking whichever one will allow me to craft items faster.
Right.
I don't find any benefit in any of them besides that.
Well, what do you think of the long-term implications of having the garrison as the raid tier gets old, Florian?
It's a good question. I don't really know what they're going to be. It's going to depend mostly on what Blizzard decides to do with the garrisons. I think right now, once everyone starts to get geared up and the crafted gear becomes less relevant, the garrison is going to become less important, with the exception of it still being useful for gearing up new alts or for a crafting gear to send over to new alts to help them get geared up. I don't think that the garrison is going to have any staying power unless Blizzard adds new garrison content, which they've already said they're going to do in 6.1. So I think it will still work out, and I think we'll still find the garrisons useful, because we have to remember that they're currently not in their final state. We're just seeing the first stage of garrisons, and we really have no idea what Blizzard has planned going forward as we get into further patches and further raid tiers.
Do you think they already know what they're going to do, or do you think they're waiting on feedback?
I'm sure they have it planned out already, at least in general, because a lot of things, like, for example, if they wanted to add new buildings or new tiers of garrison, all that art and such has to mostly be done by now. But I do think they're going to implement feedback. They've already shown, since the launch of Warlords of Draenor, that they have shown an increased reactivity to the community's opinions and more quickly giving us a response to our problems. A good example of that was the change to dungeon loot, where it went from personal loot to need before greed, when there was a massive, well, not a massive outcry. There was a vocal minority online that was complaining about not getting enough loot with personal loot, and Blizzard temporarily changed it to need before greed. So it seems right now they're reacting more quickly to the desires of the community, and I think that's going to play into the garrison design as they go forward with garrisons.
Yeah, I agree. I have high hopes. Blizzard really delivers a lot of the time, in my personal opinion, so I'm looking forward. At any rate, with all the gameplay functionality kind of up in the air as far as how much it'll be useful in the long run. I really do like the garrison campaigns going forward with the story, and that seems like they're using the garrison to deliver the story experience for the entire expansion, and that's how it's going to kind of progress along. I'm already really fascinated and really happy with the garrison campaign mission so far.
At the same time, though, I still feel so unimportant. Even with all of the stuff that they're pushing, I still feel incredibly unimportant, because Thrall might not be the ridiculous, awesome badass in this game anymore. Khadgar is. Never have we ever been able to do anything along the lines of anything Khadgar has done since we stepped foot through the portal. Period. And even the legendary questline, we are literally doing things in Highmole and stuff because Khadgar is busy with things that he deems more important, which is like Gul'dan, which is perfectly fine, but it literally is him essentially telling us, go deal with that while I do the big boy work.
Yeah.
Like, he doesn't even care about, like, well, he does care, but he's like meh about Imperator Margok and Blackrock Foundry. You got the army, you go deal that. I'm gonna do my big awesome magic and try and figure out how to stop Gul'dan. Okay, thanks, bye.
I guess we'll have to see whether, when it comes to killing Gul'dan, whether or not he's got the goods to do it. Maybe he's so powerful he makes himself a target, and you need us because Gul'dan doesn't think we're as important, and that's when we get from the old 1-2 straight to the moon.
Boo. Alright, let's go into the final section. So, let's go into our review. Welcome to the review section. Each week we pick something to review. For the last 5 weeks we've always chosen a 5-man dungeon. It doesn't always have to be a instance. It could be a raid, it could be a quest line, a zone. We decided to change up a little bit, and we're actually going to review a class this week. One of the classes that you can play in this beautiful game that we enjoy, and that is Death Knights. We split the review section into 3 parts. That is being ambience, gameplay, and lore. These 3 pieces generally encompass everything that brings us anything that enriches our experience in the game. Ambience being how it looks, how it feels, how it sounds, the feeling of it. Gameplay is obviously the interaction, the numbers, the abilities, the boss fights, the loot, anything that affects the way that the game is conducted. And then lore is the story, the history, the book worthiness of it. And we will step into ambience first. And we chose Death Knight as the first class because that we're going to review because we all have one and we've all played them a lot and we all enjoy them a great deal. So this was one class that we knew we'd all have a significant amount to say on them and that we'd all have a shared, not necessarily shared opinion from what I can see on our notes here, but we all have experience in it. And we'll go ahead and kick it off with Florian for the ambience.
The ambience for Death Knights I have really enjoyed since they first came out. I like how they have a lot of unique physical features that other classes don't have. Regardless of your race, you get the glowing blue eyes, like Arthas, and I also really like the reverb effects on the voices that give you sort of this unnatural feel, I suppose, to the natural voice of whatever your race would be. And I think Blizzard did a great job with those, just showing that you are still whatever race you chose, but you are something apart, something different from what you originally were before you became a Death Knight. In addition to that, they've got there's a good variety of art and effects on the different spells and abilities that they have. I've never really had any complaints about those. And they also have some of, in my opinion, the coolest armor sets in the game available to them. Some of the Death Knight tier gear, especially things like the tier 10, which looked very much like the Lich King's armor,
Scourge Lord.
Yes, Scourge Lord. Those were some of the most awesome sets in the game, in my opinion, and definitely show off the Scourge aesthetic that Death Knights tend to have.
Are you speaking for plate wearers specifically, or all over in general?
Plate wearers? I'm talking specifically Death Knights.
Well, and you're talking about their armor set right now, and I'm asking, are you talking about they have the coolest plate sets or coolest armor sets, period? Like, are we comparing this to mail, leather, and cloth as well, or just specifically the other plate classes?
I think more or less plate classes.
Okay.
Because each plate class kind of has its own distinctive look. Like, if you look at a paladin set, even if I didn't tell you what it was, you would be able to tell it was a paladin set. They have a lot of golden light colors. You have a lot of purple crystal stuff tend to work into them. Sometimes books on the shoulders. And Death Knights also have the same telltale things, specifically skulls everywhere and lots of glowing eyes on those skulls. So I think the sets are really well designed to show off the Scourge aesthetic that the Death Knights are built around.
Well, and the thing that I've had a problem with is while like their armor looks good, I feel like, and this might be because I can't even necessarily say it's because they're old, but like me personally, the one I've played the most is a Blood Death Knight and a Frost Death Knight. But the problem that I've had is that, like, especially as Blood, the female human is what my Death Knight is. For almost every single attack, she does the same animation. It bugs me so much because the ability is she turns her weapon sideways and spins in a circle. And as a Blood Death Knight, I am literally almost doing nothing but spinning in a circle. Like just circle.
Now, is this is this an opinion from before the character model change? Because I had the same complaint, exactly same complaint when I had my Tauren Death Knight in Mr. Pandaria. He does the two-hand overhead swing on every death strike, every blood strike, runic strike. I think they've improved that a little bit after the ability consolidation, because the only abilities using that animation right now for me is Plague Strike and Death Strike. I only have to cast Plague Strike once a battle, so I'm doing more Blood Boil, more Death Coil Baseball, if you know what I'm saying.
Death Coil Baseball. Oh my god.
And so I think that with the way they've changed the abilities, taking Heart Strike is what it's called, not Blood Strike. Taking Heart Strike out has reduced, and taking the Rune Strike, that runic power dump, it's taken the animations and made them not so repetitive. So I'm actually happy with it now since Warlords, but before Warlords was having the exact same complaint as you.
And yeah, it's definitely improved, but the thing is and this is that complaint might just be a complaint for melee classes in general. I don't notice as much on my rogue, because it's a lot of movement for when a rogue is fighting in general. But for Death Knight supposed to be the caster melee class, I feel as though so many of their spell effects are really weak. The casting animation for essentially every, for a race is always the same, but the spell effects are different. Whereas if the Death Knight is supposed to be this caster melee class, I don't ever see very many spell effects for them. And so that just takes away from it to where it's I stick my hand out at you and nothing really happens.
Well, contrasting with that are spells like Hungering Cold and Death and Decay, which have pretty, if you turn up your spell textures or spell
Everything
effects a
on
little
Ultra,
bit.
yeah.
I think those are pretty compelling. I put in the notes here, compare Hungering Cold, which is a 5-second stun that ramps up, to Leg Sweep of the monks. If you've ever played a monk, Leg Sweep is, you do a quick little spin. There's no flashiness, there's no energy, there's no light, really, and all the mobs fall down, and then they're stunned for 5 seconds. Hungering Cold is you have this big swirling icy tempest around you, snowing basically, and then they get frozen to big solid ice blocks. That's a little bit flashier, and it's more compelling spell, effects than some of the other classes, or like a Shockwave with the Warriors. It's also a long AoE stun that they use for crowd control. A little bit underwhelming comparatively.
Mm-hmm. And this might just be a complaint of mine in general, just because I feel like a lot of the spell effects need updated. Because for instance, in the starting quest line for Warlords of Draenor, does the Horde save the Vindicator and the Orc that are being burned alive right over top of the bridge?
What? Vindicator and Orc that are being burned alive on top of the bridge? Are you talking
After
about
the bridge? Castbar gives you a spell and you shoot a whole bunch of cold effects to put out the fire.
Yeah. I thought you were talking about the death.
Beautiful.
Right.
And compared to some of the spell effects we have now, it's man, our abilities just seem so sad. And it shows in Death Knights and in a whole bunch of other classes too. A whole bunch of the stuff that Castbar does is so pretty. It's why can't I do that?
Yeah, and you were thinking when Blizzard was talking about tuning down the spell effects from other players so that you don't have, the melee classes aren't being blinded every time the Druid does Moonfire, that kind of thing. You see more of your own spells, less of everybody else's spells. You would think they would really ramp up the flashiness on a lot of some of these characteristic abilities, especially ones in the long cooldowns. But I didn't see too much of that happening.
It makes me sad.
But still, as compared to the other classes, I think the ambience and the spell effects that DK has, especially with what Florian said, with the extra skin color choices, I think the Arcaris, or however you spell it, Arcaris, the floating citadel or whatever in Eastern Plague Lands, is a kind of class-specific zone. I think that adds to the ambience of being a Death Knight, little secret retreat you can teleport to, open up your little Death Gate. I think these kind of things, like the Force Choke, like your little Darth Vader move with Asphyxiate, I think these things make it a really cool class to play. I think it's visually really interesting.
final grade on Ambience, Evan?
I'm going to give it an A. I think they knocked this one out of the park, and I think this still remains a really iconic class.
Florian?
This is the standard, yeah.
I'll also give it an A. In general, I don't really have anything bad to say about the ambience. It's very well. They had a good target, and they clearly executed it very well.
Well, you've brought my grade up. My initial grade was a D, and I'm going to give it a C. Their big CDs are very impressive. Army of the Dead is very impressive. I consider things like Death and Decay to be it's not necessarily as big as like the 5-minute, but you can't use it all the time. And it's also very cool, although I really just think all the spell effects in general should get an update at some point soon. I hope that's what's next, is updated spell effects, because they're all getting rather antiquated. But I feel as though with as much character as Death Knights have, it isn't always clearly defined in their visuals.
Right. I would like to see, if you're a healer focusing on Death Knight tank and they use Icebound Fortitude, I don't want to have a macro to tell them. I think it should be kind of obvious. Like the Guardian Spirit, the priest casts on a Death Knight, gives him big wings. It's obvious what's happening there. I don't need to have a buff watcher or weak aura or something like that to tell me. If I had some Icebound Fortitude turn me into a big ice golem looking thing, or give me a spell effect like that, my empower runic weapon, if it's on a 5-minute cooldown, I'd like to be able to notice it when I cast it. Really, I don't think it does anything visually. Those are things I think could be improved upon, but compared to the other classes, I think this is one of the best ones.
My grade stands. Okay, moving into gameplay. This is the numbers, the abilities, how they play. I'll open this one, and I'm just going to say that they've been broken forever. When they first came out, Death Knights were the most overpowered things in existence. They were just broken. It didn't matter which spec you played, you were broken. You just won at everything forever. And that hasn't changed a whole lot. They've been brought down to where they're not just always the best, but they're still just so ridiculously powerful all the time. And it doesn't matter what you have them do either. They've always been good in PvP. They've always been good tanks. They've always been good DPS. Since they came out, they've been the best at soloing content since forever. We've seen them solo current content by themselves, just like, oh, I got this, I'm a Death Knight, I know what I'm doing. Obviously the skill cap to do that is high, but the fact that they can is ridiculous. My brain is so slow today. I keep on having thoughts, and they just trail away into the nether. That being said, though, they're a fantastic class to play. They're super easy to play, which isn't bad. I believe that all classes should follow Blizzard's model of easy to play, difficult to master, and Death Knights are a beautiful example. You can easily get by with a Death Knight with only, a basic 2 or 3 button rotation, but you can easily add in all of these other things to really push it up to the next level on them. Where are you guys at? I know that you're currently maining a Death Knight, right, Evan? And Florian, this is your main alt currently?
That is correct. The way I feel about Death Knight gameplay is you've pretty much summed a lot of it up already. One of the best things about the class is how easy it is to pick up and play. And pretty much anyone could pick up a Death Knight and learn it in next to no time, whereas a lot of other classes have a much longer time required to learn them and figure out how they work. Another thing I've always loved about Death Knights is they always have something to do. They're in general, most specs of Death Knights have pretty much zero downtime. There's always a button you can press. You are never totally out of runes, or even if you're totally out of runes and you're totally out of runic power, you'll always have a cooldown ready to go. You can hit blood tap. You can do something to get back to continue doing something. So especially for players who have a lot of ADD and need to constantly be doing something, the Death Knight is a wonderful class for that, because you're always pressing buttons, you're always casting a spell. There's no standing around waiting for something to happen. Aside from that, another thing I really liked about them was the fact that, and this is more in the past sort of, was that they had very strong variety. And this is still true to some extent today, because Unholy and Frost and Blood play very differently. But it was even more so back in Wrath, when you could tank or DPS with any of the 3 talent trees, which is something I would like to see come back, although I very much doubt Blizzard would do that. And it allowed a great deal of variety within the class while still keeping the same gameplay feel and that same fast-paced gameplay that the class is known for.
I still think Frost should have been the tanking spec. It makes more sense to me. So I would not be sad to see them change that up, but I'm pretty sure it's established now that Blood is tank and the other 2 are DPS. I still think Frost. I mean, the signature save my butt cooldown for tanking is Icebound Fortitude.
Mm-hmm. Think it doesn't fit?
No, it doesn't fit at all. I mean, I still think it should have been Frost, and I enjoyed tanking as Frost more than I did as Blood back in Wrath. And that's another thing that really hurt gameplay for me, is just how many times Death Knights have changed. They have been changed more than any other class drastically over and over again. Almost with every expansion have they been very drastically changed. Only in Warlords have they not had such a very harsh change put upon them. And I mean, even still, they had a lot of changes compared to some classes with the the ability pruning and everything. They got hit pretty hard. Not necessarily in a bad way, but they keep getting changed so much.
Well, yeah, the biggest change that has affected them since the beginning of their inception was the removal of the tanking spec from the removal of tanking from Holy and Frost, and that happened relatively early, I think, in Wrath of the Lich King, if I'm not mistaken. They didn't last very long with all 3 tank specs before Blizzard decided to pull that functionality because it was too, I guess, hard to balance, I guess. However, since they've kind of made this archetype of the Blood is the tank, the Unholy is a 2-handed DPS, and the Frost has the option to do 2-handed or dual-wielding DPS, I think all 3 specs are different enough, and they've maintained their kind of character since. I mean, Unholy's always been, you have the permanent pet. Frost has always been the one that can dual wield and casts a lot of, spell magic. And I don't think they've gone through too many changes. I don't think they got hit particularly hard with the ability prune, compared to some of the other hybrid classes like we were discussing in a previous episode, like Druids, who they lost a lot of their cross-spec functionality. I think Death Knights got off more or less fairly, and their ability pruning changes in general, I think, were for the best and just increased the efficacy of all of their, roles, basically, and increased the diversity between the classes, or between the specs, and it also made everything a little bit easier to play and gave it a little bit better of a complex gameplay.
Okay. And that's very fair. It just still bothers me. So, final grade for gameplay, Evan. Oh, wait, one last thing before you go into that. The other problem that I had with the gameplay for Death Knights is that people still, even now, do not comprehend how the runic power system is perfectly fine. The rune system of these blood runes, death runes, frost runes, and holy runes makes so little sense to so many people. And honestly, right now, I still couldn't tell you how it works. And I have played one in all kinds of different settings, including high-level raids and all kinds of stuff. I still don't truly know how it works. All I know is how to make my rotation work the way that I want, so I have the runes that I need when I need them.
Well, with the biggest change of the rune system, I think, was that in Frost and Unholy, you have one type of rune that's permanently a death rune. I think in Frost, your Unholy runes are permanently death runes, and in Holy, your blood runes are permanently death runes. Correct me if I'm wrong. Which kind of cheesed the system a little bit for me. Like back when you had all 3 types of runes and all 3 specs, and you had to kind of manage them. If you were a frost spec, you're trying to get those frost runes off cooldown, and the blood runes were kind of throwing a wrench in your gears, so to speak. I think Blizzard's trying to take that out of the equation. They don't want to throw wrenches in your gears just to make it complicated for no reason. They'd rather have it deep and simple to get into, and then complex to master. But as far as the rune system, I think it's great because it's unique. Nothing else is like it in any other class. It doesn't really resemble combo points or chi necessarily, because each rune has like different, a character. You can't cast one spell with just the one rune. You need to have the specific rune. I think that introduces a level of uniqueness that I think makes it a really great class.
Okay, so again, final grade.
Oh, I'm going to give it a. I played a lot of alts, and this is one of the ones that caught my attention. This is the one that I selected for this expansion. I'm not unhappy with that choice at all. I think they really succeeded with this one.
I mean, if it's your main, you should probably like it.
Exactly. I tried out quite a few of them to make the selection.
And Florian?
I'm going to give it an A as well. I played Death Knights for 3 straight expansions, and this is the main reason. The gameplay is always really fun and engaging. It's not overly complicated, but there is always another level you can reach towards to master the Death Knight further and get better at it. So I feel it's probably one of the best designed classes in the game.
And I'm going to be the party pooper and give it a C. It's a class that I love a lot, but I still just see these glaring problems in it. At least for me specifically, these glaring problems that are in it. And that just really hurts it for my end. And then the final aspect of it is something that is a little bit better for me, and that's the lore. The lore for Death Knights goes farther back than Wrath by a long ways. It goes back to the very beginning almost. Wow, my brain still is just like thoughts form and then they just kind of shut down. Evan,
Warcraft 3.
help me please.
Warcraft 3 is when we first saw Death Knights, I think, right?
I believe that's the first time we actually saw them, but the story for them actually goes back before the First War.
Is that right? Because of
Second War.
It depends on what flavor of Death Knights you're talking about. Because the current Death Knights, the Scourge Death Knights, were from Warcraft 3. But before that, we had a different kind of Death Knights, which were the Orcish Death Knights that Gul'dan created, where you'd put Orc warlocks into the bodies of dead humans. Which, they were the same thing in name, but I wouldn't really say they're the same as the Scourge Death Knights that we currently play in WoW.
Fair. I am so bad today. Just so bad today.
So I really like that the class has its own class intro. And one of the things that I score highly for in the lore category is the fact that the lore is actually relevant, really relevant to the story. And I compare it to 2 other instances. One of them is the introduction of the monk class with Mr. Pandaria. Yeah, it's kind of their culture. They have the kind of the Zen Buddhist kung fu culture in Pandaria itself and on the Turtle Island or whatever. But it didn't seem like that was a compelling part of the story for that entire expansion. We weren't fighting alongside really any famous monks except for the one guy, and I didn't feel like it was as integral to that story as the Death Knights were integral to the Wrath of the Lich King story. The other comparison I wanted to draw was when they finally introduced Paladins to the Horde and Shamans to the Alliance in the Burning Crusade. There was kind of the explanation for why Blood Elves could be Paladins all of a sudden, and why Draenei could be Shaman. And I mean, yeah, it kind of did the trick as far as bridging the lore gap there. The Blood Elves had the imprisoned Neru, and I think when the Draenei landed on Azure Mist Island, they were communicating with the Furlbogs. There were some kind of the Furlbogs, I guess, were imprisoned, and they were helping the Draenei understand the elements, and that was the first Draenei shamans. coming about after that whole interaction. And I didn't feel like those storylines were as compelling as this Death Knight storyline.
Yeah, they were integrated into the expansion throughout the entire thing.
Right, whereas these other two were kind of more like an afterthought, Blizzard saying, oh, we need to give these cross-faction classes, let's give a quick little explanation, put an intern on it, and the monks being like, yeah, a lot of the really cool architecture, we could do a cool starting zone, we could have some monks in the storyline, and have the big training dojos where you have everybody doing their jabs in a big grid. I think that was kind of cool, but still not integral to the story. And then the other aspect that gives me a high rating in lore is the fact that if you're role-playing a Death Knight, you can really take a lot of different angles from this problem. Did you used to be Alliance? Were you a human and you're raised as an undead Death Knight and now you're on the Horde? What was your previous life like? Because people can roleplay Forsaken like they used to be humans of the Lordaeron. But it's kind of limited. With Death Knights, you can be any race. Almost any race, at least. And I think it opens up a whole lot of really cool options for what got you into the situation. Where are you from? How old are you? This kind of thing. And for that, I give the lore an A.
Well, and one of the biggest glaring questions for me, is what happened to, what are the Death Knights doing now after Wrath? They were such the big important piece in Wrath of the story, and then after that, we don't really know enough about how Death Knights function. Do they feel? Do they have feelings? Do they even have nerves? Do they feel pain? Do they,
I was in a role-playing guild very briefly, and they had their own storyline going on. There was a discussion in guild chat about whether or not the poison that was on somebody's blade would have affected the Death Knight when they were stabbed at the end of one meeting by some hidden rogue or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
People saying, oh, gameplay-wise, they're not immune to poison, but lore-wise, I mean, they don't have blood. The blood's frozen solid. That kind of thing. It raises interesting questions.
Right, and that's... There's just so many questions about Death Knight that we never really get answered, not even in novels, that it just really drags lore for me, because it just feels incomplete. Florian, where are you at on lore?
It's difficult to say. I enjoyed all of the lore all through Wrath, which they did an awesome job with. But once again, we have this problem where we've just been kind of left hanging as Death Knights lore-wise. And there are all these strange questions, not only about the Death Knights themselves, but about their purpose. The Death Knights were a group who had one specific goal. That specific goal was go find the Lich King and kill that guy. And now it's just, what do you do? Why do you continue to exist? For example, for Draenei Death Knights or Night Elf Death Knights, who are basically have become an abomination that is the exact opposite of what their races believe in. The question is, why do you not just kill yourself? Why do you continue existing as a Death Knight? And a lot of this stuff has never really been answered by Blizzard. I like the lore that is there. It is awesome and very well defined. But I feel there's so much that could still be done, and I feel Blizzard wants to come back to it. They kind of hint from time to time, even right now, there's a daily quest you can get where Darian Mograine will come into the inn in your garrison, and he will ask you to gather something from, I think it's from the Shadowmoon Burial Grounds instance, so they can do research on Ner'zhul and try to understand more about the nature of the Lich King.
Mm-hmm.
So it seems like there's at least some interest in going back and doing more Death Knight stuff, but until Blizzard does more of it, I can't really give it a full grade, because like you said, it feels incomplete. It feels like they started and didn't totally finish it, either in the game or in the expanded material, like the books and such. So on the whole, I would give it a B, maybe a B+. We'll say B+.
Okay. And that's where I'm sitting on the same page as well, as B+, somewhere right in that area. Because there is just so much missing. It just needs... There's so much more in all of the other classes, even if they didn't have essentially an expansion designed around them. There's so much in just like whether it's their old class quests or just quests across vanilla and BC, and they also get a little bit extra here and there. There's a lot of insight into a whole bunch of like, especially like shamans and stuff in the books, and warlocks. There's just so much out there for the other classes that really they don't really have. They're just static, whereas the Death Knights, they actually had a progression. And now that progression technically ended, and that just really hurts it a lot. So that makes my grade on it be a B+ as well. Wow, really? Seriously? All right, I'm glad we are almost done, because my brain is apparently done. And that brings lore to an A, gameplay to a B, and ambience to a B+, which puts our final grade for Death Knights really right around an A. They're a really fantastic class. From all angles. I think that, like, especially like my dogging on the ambience and stuff is just something that I'm going to be probably dogging on everything for, that they really need some updates in some ways. I can think of a couple classes off the top of my head that still have very beautiful effects. But it's a class, especially now that they're announcing the change, that you don't have to have a level 55 to play a Death Knight anymore.
Oh yeah, we didn't mention that.
Yeah, it's true. It completely slipped my mind until this exact moment of that. It used to be that you had to have a level 55 or higher to create a Death Knight, because they start at level 55. They're a hero class. As of like the next patch, that requirement will be gone. So you can start a new game, and you could technically start at level 55 as a brand new player with a Death Knight. And I would not see the harm in that at all, because the Death Knight starting zone is very good in babying you and giving your abilities slowly, and the class as a whole is very easy. Besides the runic system, it's very easy to understand, very easy to play, and they have enough power that even if you don't have the skill required to really excel, they could still get you by. I highly recommend the class, whereas I already can think of others that I don't recommend. We'll get to those on future weeks. Do you guys have anything to add to the final score of an A to Death Knights?
No, man. Just look into getting up your Knights of the Ebon Blade reputation if you're going to have a level 3 barracks, so you can get some Death Knight guards in your garrison.
Because awesome.
Yeah.
That brings us to the end of the show, everybody. We ran a little bit long. I apologize if you are tired of hearing us talk. As always, you can contact us at our email at thecastbar@gmail.com. The podcast Twitter is at Castbar Podcast, or you can call and leave us a voicemail at 508-738-2278. Currently, all of our shows you can only find on iTunes and Stitcher. If you would like us to post them somewhere else, if there's another broadcasting network or something like that, or if you want us to start posting them somewhere else, I need to know where those places are, because currently I don't know where else you'd like them. So go ahead and let us know if you'd like to see them somewhere else. The music for our bumpers is done by Kevin MacLeod. You can find his work at incomtech.com. It's all royalty-free music, so you can use it and credit him, or you can buy it and not have to. So if you'd like to go check out his work, you can find it there. If you'd like to get a hold of me personally, you can either address an email to my attention at the email, or you can find my Twitter, which is at Schwahn Michael. Evan, where are people able to get a hold of you?
You can get a hold of me through the Castbar@gmail.com account, or you can also hit me up on Twitter at EDCWow.
And Florian?
In much the same manner, you can email me at the Castbar if you have something that requires more than 140 characters to say. If not, you can find me on Twitter at Phalanx.
Spelled
Phalangx. You can find it in the show notes if you so desire.
Okay.
Nice.
And then as a little closing statement, please remember our RG giveaway. This is the last week. The contest does close on Christmas Day, which is December 25th, which is this Thursday. After that, we will be collecting all of the entries, and we will be announcing the winner, or possible winners, depending on number of entries, in 1 week on Sunday, December 28th. So tune into that episode number 7, if you are interested, or if you've put in your entries. You can always go back to the last couple of episodes to brush up on the other questions, to put your answers in for those if you'd like extra entries. Other than that, it is the holiday week, so everyone enjoy your holidays, stay home, stay warm, and enjoy a good time. Take it easy, guys.
See you, man.
You are bout of time.
King Rin for the win!